have severe gastric upset. So this is the one that sends more people to hospital than any other. So when we have, with our mushrooms, there we go. With our mushrooms, we have 3 different sorts of mushrooms. We've got the decomposers. So this little one here is a decomposer. We have the parasitic mushrooms, which are normally detrimental to a plant's health. So they're normally things that you get in your garden, like the black spot on your roses. That's a fungi as well. And then we've got the mycorrhizal. So all of our wild mushrooms that we get that cost a lot of money in, say, like the Mushroom Man shop in the markets. Yeah. They're the mycorrhizal fungi. So they require a tree to grow on its roots, and they have a mutualistic relationship where the tree provides a structure for that mushroom to grow, and the mushroom then provides the tree with nutrients that it can't get. And majority of our trees in Australia, because we've got such poor soils in Australia, they require mycorrhizal fungi to live with them to help them thrive and grow. So if it wasn't for fungi, they say that if fungi got wiped out tomorrow, we'd probably be dead within a couple of weeks. So fungi are probably the most important thing that we have in the world. They provide us with soil, and like I said, they give the trees and other plants nutrients as well. So fungi are hugely important. I think that's probably one of the main reasons why I love fungi so much. So we've got just another decomposer there as well. We've got here is this little guy. Oh, there you go. So that's why it gets its name, the shaggy ink cap. So Coprinus comatus. So Coprinus means it comes from poo, but these ones don't actually. It's just a generic name that these ink caps have got, and they're not all related, and only certain ones grow on manure. And comatus means wig, basically. So so pooey wig, I guess. These guys were used to make ink.
Oh.
Yeah, and they used to believe that that you couldn't consume alcohol with them, but that's not the case at all. They don't contain the chemical coprin, which stops the breakdown of methanol, which is the byproduct of ethanol. So ethanol is your alcohol that you drink, and then your body converts that into methanol. Is it? We've got a doctor here, sorry. No, I'm more than happy. I'm more than happy to be corrected on that. I want to give the right information. Right. Okay. So you don't. It's not an alcohol poisoning. It's a poisoning from the breakdown of the alcohol. I don't think it's necessarily fatal. I don't think any mushroom has enough of the chemical in them to cause fatal poisoning, but these ones don't anyway. These ones are completely safe. I don't drink. I haven't drunk for 5 years, but Dean does, my husband, and he's eaten them and drunk a beer at the same time, so we can vouch for that. Yeah. So I haven't managed to poison him yet.
But I did have hair when we met. These are probably one of the most well, do you like them, Diane? They have probably the most water content out of all of the other mushrooms. So slow cooking is the key to these guys, and then browning them up afterwards just to evaporate some of that water out. I don't mind them. I don't know, I find them a little bit bitter. Yeah. I don't know, I'm very sensitive to bitter. Yeah. Yeah, so, which is funny because a lot of the weeds as well that we have are quite bitter as well. So,
Yeah, yeah. I love sour, but the bitter is something that I really don't like. People used to think that as soon as they start to decompose like that, that they weren't good for eating, but you can actually let these guys completely decompose into an ink and use them as a squid ink alternative. Yeah.
Oh, to make pasta.
Yeah, or sauces or whatever. So yeah, they still do have a use afterwards, and that's just a natural process that they have, is that they just start to they call it auto digest. And so all those will eventually just turn to liquid. Yeah.
Sorry.
That's all right. There's heaps of opportunity for photos as well. So
So you can eat that one.
yeah. There are other ink caps as well. They're not related in the slightest. As what we call convergent evolution. So two things have
Opposed to divergent evolution.
yeah. So these two things have evolved in the same niche, so in the same environment, but in different areas. So they've grown to have the same habits. We got one more little decomposer here, but I think there's still research happening with these guys, whether or not they are actually 100% a decomposer or something that's a little bit mutualistic. But these ones are my favourite.
They're very tasty.
They are. So these have a few different names: Scotch bonnet, Mouseron, fairy ring champignon. My mum used to always beat these out of my hands. Don't touch them; they're poisonous. They're toadstools. Just on that, there's no such thing as a toadstool. It's just it's this guy here is where the name toadstool came from, and they used to think that if you touched it, you'd get warts. But in terms of fungi, fungi's fungi. There's no difference between a toadstool and a mushroom scientifically. So these ones are the ones that grow in your lawn in little rings, and you'll quite often see them growing, see a green patch. And that's because they release a hormone which helps the grass grow. There are a couple of lookalikes, but none of them would grow in a ring like these do. So the bright green patch in your lawn in a ring is normally the best way to identify these ones. In Europe, they would traditionally grow in areas like this, but we're just far too dry over here for them to grow naturally like that. So they normally just grow in turf, ovals, sporting ovals, reserves, front yards, verges. And they contain a sugar that allows them to completely dry up when they're in the soil, and that once it dries, so once it starts to rain again, so if they've come up and have a dry spell, and once it rains again, they will just come back to life and continue their life cycle. So and that sugar makes them a little bit sweet as well. So yeah. I love them. These are my favourite.
Wow.
And but they do get a little bit lost if you're going to put them in a dish. So they're our decomposers. Now I've got one parasitic here, so I'll talk about that one. Now don't worry, because this one has very little germination or reproduction by the spores, and fungi don't actually really reproduce via spores. Majority of the reproduction of fungi occurs under the ground. Spores are just an added bonus. So this is what we call root rot fungi, or Armillaria luteovalvolina.
Sometimes I can't spell the most common of words, but for some reason Armillaria luteobulbarina comes easy to me. This one it kills trees, and I work for Unley Council, and we've had quite a few trees around our area die from infestations of this. It's naturally occurring. It's a native, so you know it's supposed to be there. The one that we have in Unley isn't luteobulbarina; it's a different one, so it's a little bit less common. Don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing, but this one is edible as well, and Armillaria, especially in Poland, has been used to eat, and they preserve it. They normally pickle it, and this one is edible. This is an Australian native, but it is still edible.
But how does it kill the tree?
So what it does is it's spread mainly underground, so through root to root contact, and once it hits the roots of a tree, it's normally an unhealthy tree.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
But once it hits the root of the tree, it will start to rot the roots away, and then go up into the living section of a tree and start to eat away at that as well. So it's really difficult to tell a tree has it until it's dead, and it happens really quickly as well. All of a sudden, you know, within a week, you won't even notice that the tree is suffering, and then you go back and it's like, when did that die? And that's what we're finding. This one here is not very. This one will pick anything to chew on, to eat, whereas the one that we've got in the Unley Council area is very exclusive to eucalypts.
So when you say the root rot, so then when you actually pull that tree out, is that what's damaged, like the
Yeah,
it just
and
comes out because it's we think it's root rot because it's overwatering, but in fact it could be that.
well, overwatering as well will cause fungi to grow, especially if you've got the conditions that we've had, where we've had a really long summer, and we're continuing to water and putting mulch onto our soils as well, and overcrowding those the root system. It could be a different fungi that is causing that, but this one's mainly trees, whereas other microfungi and bacterias will also cause what we call a crown rot, which is very similar. So this one I haven't seen on the plains, but it does grow around the hills. And this one doesn't care what tree it attacks. So that's our only parasitic one that we've got here.
But they're okay to eat.
Yeah, they are. They're a bit bitter. In Poland, they boil them and then fry them to get rid of that bitterness. They've got an interesting texture.
Interesting, as in you don't like it.
I actually don't like a lot of mushrooms, to be honest. So my interest has come purely from a conservation. So it's purely from conservation, and because they're so important to our survival, I found the best way of educating people about what is out there was through food. People want to know what they can eat, and
They look rubbery.
they can be, and they've got a really rough texture. It's almost like a soft shark skin, almost.
Yeah, it doesn't feel very inviting.
Yeah, but they are edible, and my friend in Perth has been eating them for 25 years, so yeah. I think you don't mind them, do you, Dean?
No, they're alright.
They're alright, they're not great.
You wouldn't go out of your way. If you found some, you might try them, but you wouldn't be out there hunting for them.
Yeah. Now, just with fungi as well, I just thought I'd let you know that there's no fungi that are dangerous to touch. And you're never going to get enough chemical on your hand to
I thought it was the opposite.
no, and so I can prove it.
Don't. Oh, I will
These
not
are
touch
death
it.
caps.
I will not touch this one.
So I mean I'll wash my hands obviously after, but there is no fungi that is dangerous to touch in Australia. There's one fungi. No, there's only one fungi worldwide, and it is so remote in some Asian country, I can't remember exactly where it is, that is dangerous to touch. He's all right. This is my show. This one, no. But it's not dangerous to touch, and so the one that is dangerous to touch, people will never see it. Only a certain amount of people have ever found it, and
they're dead.
yeah. But most other fungi, it's not. It's completely safe to touch. Yeah. So this one here is a death cat, and it gets its name for obvious reasons because it is deadly, and no.
It's not a native.
No, this one's introduced, and it's introduced with pines, with oaks. It came over with oaks, and it mostly grows with oaks, but it has jumped species to certain conifers as well. So mainly exclusively under oaks, but you can find it every now and then under a pine. So this is one of our mycorrhizal fungi, and this is responsible for the mushroom deaths that we've had in Australia, most of them, bar one.
What kind of death? What is doing?
It kills your liver and your kidney, and it's a very, very, very painful death, and you won't know that you've been poisoned for 12 to 5 days or something like that, which makes it very, very dangerous. 5% of people can survive a death cat poisoning. They are looking at things like St. Mary's thistle as a treatment, but it has only increased survival rates by such a minuscule amount that they've decided that it actually does nothing. So it comes down to your fighting spirit basically, and how healthy you are, whether you survive or not. But 95% says you're not going to.
Wow.
Well,
To kill someone just out of
I have heard that it's a bite isn't going to kill you. It will make you sick. I think for a certain death you would want that it would be a whole whole cat.
Just one mushroom
Used to,
Yeah.
those chefs who died or
Darling, here's breakfast.
They were Vietnamese, I believe.
Yes, they were.
And that's the problem. So the people who are dying from mushroom poisonings in Australia think that these mushrooms look like something that grows in Thailand or Vietnam. It's called Volvariella, and that's a straw mushroom. So you get that in your Thai food. It looks like a little ball, and then you cut it open as a tiny little mushroom. This one here, as you can see, it's got a little bit of an egg here, and so when that's growing, this one's probably a little better. These are gorgeous little specimens, by the way, and so you can see it's got a little bit of an egg sac here. That's what we call a vulva. Hang on, I've got to make sure I'm not referring to female. Vulva. That's a vulva. Volva. And so the Volvariella is also has that egg sac as well. And so unfortunately, majority of the people that I would actually probably even go as far to say 100% of the people in Australia that have died from death cap poisonings are of Asian descent, be it Thai or Vietnamese, because of that that look-alike.
So that is an edible.
No. I haven't. I normally try and find the look-alike, but I haven't been able to this time. But yeah, there is. I can show. So the one that we get in South Australia is called Volvo Pluteus, but it's in this one it's still Volvo. It's had a name change. So in this one, and as you can see, it does grow quite similar. It's got that egg.
Not the same shape of the cat.
No, and different colour as well.
When you say egg, what is in there? Are the spores down there and not up there? Or?
No. The spores are in the gills there.
All right.
So
when you're saying egg cap, what is
no
in
the
there?
egg that just it has a
Just for its shape.
protective
All right.
a protective sheath over it, and if you're digging about where they're growing, they can come out looking like a ball rather than a mushroom. So it will emerge from an egg.
But do you taste? I found a mushroom. Can you taste?
Oh yes.
Can you taste the difference with these, or do they just taste like
Oh,
mushrooms?
the ones that are edible taste horrible. These ones apparently are one of the yummiest mushrooms you can eat. Yeah.
So
So
if you're on death's door.
yeah, absolutely on death
maybe.
row. If you're on death
we
row,
could talk about that, but say if you go reprieve. Then
You make sure you make that decision right at the very end.
this one here is a little native, but as you can see, it's got a it's got a bit more of a an egg that you can see, and it's more flimsy than the Volvariella, the straw mushroom. So that's that guy.
you've got some whites underneath if you want.
So where did all these ones come from in this basket?
Um,
Not the mushroom store in the market.
no, Dean's picked them from around the hills out Mylor way, I think. I don't know. I prefer taking photos of mushrooms. I'm not interested in picking them. That's Dean's job. He loves it. He gets obsessed with it.
A little, yeah.
Yeah.
So Jean found the poisonous one?
Yeah. You know what? I've never actually seen them in Australia. I've seen them growing in the UK, but yeah, I've never actually seen them. So now that Dean reckons he's not going to share his spot with me.
That's what happens when you find your own secret spots, whether it be edibles or no.
No, I can't believe that. Everything I've done for you. Now these little ones, I just adore these. I just think they're just so gorgeous. These are what we call a Leucaria, and that they have a way of reproducing that no other mushroom, no other fungi does, and it allows them to hybridize.
What does that mean?
So they can cross-pollinate crossbreed with another of the same species. That's very rare, but they can be quite difficult to identify because of that reason. These guys grow pretty much exclusively under pines. These particular ones, we do get native ones. So these are Leucarias and likely bicolour because of you can see different colours on the stem, and but there is a couple of others that we get growing, and we have a lot of native Leucarias as well. And I have been told that there is no poisonous Leucaria out there. They've normally got these quite sinuous stems, so they look a bit tough and stringy. So that's normally a good way of telling them apart. They're nice, but you could probably imagine that you need to pick a lot of them to eat them, to make a nice meal out of them. So that's that little fella. We may see some of these today. We may find some of these today. These are where these are your
Fairy tale ones.
yeah, your fairy tale ones, exactly. So these have been introduced with the pines in the pine forests, and so these ones grow exclusively. Well, they used to grow exclusively under pines, but they've been jumping to replace our native fungi, unfortunately. So this one's a little bit different from the death cap. So it's the same species, so same genus. So they're both amanitas. But these ones, its egg is left on the cap. So this one still has its egg, but it's now showing up as these little warts on the top of the cap. So yeah, they both have an egg, and that's common for the Amanita species. This one is edible. It's not deadly. No. It's if you eat it raw, without correctly preparing it, it does have a psychotropic effect. But it's more, rather than hallucinogenic, it's more of a
Dysphoric?
yeah. So like a downer. Yeah, what's that?
Depressant. Depressant.
Yeah, something like that. So, it has been used for centuries for mental illness as well. Hypnotic. It's more of a hypnotic effect. But to prepare it correctly, you need to boil it in water and then discard that water, and then boil it again in water and then discard that. I've heard twice, I've heard 3 times. I don't think it really, I'm not really too sure. I'd probably go 3 times, but why would you bother? Because then you're washing out the flavour of the mushroom, and
we wouldn't advise anyone to
No.
eat it. We'd just give you, you got that, that you can, but we would never.
We would never even.
We wouldn't even consider it.
We wouldn't even consider it. And on that, hypochondria and fungi consumption is a real big thing, and it does exist. So we've both suffered from hypochondria after
every
being
new mushroom, my heart starts.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel sick. I've got to go.
Dizzy?
Dizzy, sweating, but really it's fine.
Yeah.
You're
So
looking out for any single sign.
yeah.
We do our research before. We don't just try things just
Willy-nilly.
not knowing. No, we do lots of spore prints and things.
Yeah. Yeah, I can talk about spore prints. So yeah, I would never bother. I would never bother eating these.
Is that the magic mushroom? Or?
Well, it's similar too, but I've got no. I don't even drink alcohol. I've got no interest in any mind-altering experiences. I don't know. People do munch on these for to get high, but I've got no interest. And now this one here is a very similar one, and going back to that one there where it is edible if you prepare it. This one here is 100% edible, but because it's an amanita, we still aren't interested in really eating it. So this is related to the death cap as well, and it's related to the fly agaric there. So they're in the same genus as the death cap and the fly agaric. This is the blusher, it's called, and it's got the white gills. It's got the leftover egg on the cap, and it grows under pines and oaks, and that's edible once it's cooked. And a lot of wild fungi can be poisonous if it's not cooked, so it just heated through really. So a lot of them do contain chemicals which are broken down by the heating process, but on that, humans don't produce enough chitinase, which is the enzyme. I've got to write that down. Chitinase. I'll have Diane there. Chitinase is the enzyme which breaks down chitin, which makes up the cell walls of the fungi. So humans produce minuscule amounts of that, so we can't eat raw mushrooms.
Oh.
All mushrooms need to be cooked to get any benefit whatsoever. You're not going to do yourself any damage. You're just not going to get any benefit, any nutrients from raw mushrooms.
Yeah, they are in salads for us. Yeah.
It doesn't hurt you,
They just don't tell you.
you just won't get anything.
Yeah. No, it's fine.
You've got to cook some of them.
Yeah, I did say that.
Yeah.
That some raw mushrooms do contain toxins that need cooking anyway. So it is recommended that all wild mushrooms get cooked,
Okay.
no matter what. But you store-bought ones, it really doesn't matter. If you like the taste, like I say, if you like the taste of something, I mean, you know, it's what harm is it? You know, it's not going to do you any harm.
So I'm not going to get benefits.
No. So, yeah, so if you want to get benefits from a mushroom, you have to cook it. But yeah, we don't even eat this one. Just because of we can't separate the association between the death cap and these ones, even though these are perfectly edible.
Except for last weekend.
Except for last weekend, we did, yeah. Well, we only had a munch, and it's only because I had a friend over from Brisbane, and they get no edible mushrooms in Brisbane. Well, they do get some, but not very many. So we took her out mushroom hunting, and we picked some of these, and we picked some porcini, and we did a bit of a mushroom feast. Yeah, so we did, but it was only because she wanted to try them, and we thought we'd put her mind at rest by us eating them as well, because they don't get oaks in Brisbane. They don't get any deciduous trees except for the native deciduous up there, so they get nothing like this. Yeah, and so it was the first time she'd seen autumn colours as well.
Oh.
Yeah, I know, it's funny, isn't it? Things we take for granted. I often think as well that, you know, how lucky are we in Australia to take a galah for granted? You know, seeing such a beautiful bird flying around. We get to see them on a daily basis. Yeah. So these ones here, we'll find a couple today. These ones are probably the best beginner mushroom, I reckon. These ones will cause gastric upset if not cooked. No, it's just, but that's like all wild mushrooms pretty much. So it's not gonna put you in hospital. It'll just give you the runs if you eat them raw. But saying that, you need to cook them anyway. This is what we call Lacaria deliciosa. So, you know, the name says it all. And the name, so it's got two common names and its scientific name, which is Lacaria deliciosa. The common name is saffron milkcap, and the other one is pine mushroom. So all of those names are completely descriptive of its growing habit and its and characterising features of it as well. So lactarius means it lactates. So that's why. So that's the saffron milk cap. So as you can see, it's quite a saffrony colour. And so lactarius, to lactate, and deliciosus, obviously. I don't think I need to explain that one. And so the saffron milkcap and then the pine mushroom suggests its growing habit. So it grows under pines. You can see here that it turns green, a greeny blue as well. That's that milk. Once it oxidizes, it does change colour. People do say that it... some people automatically assume that the bluing is a psychotropic thing as well, but it's not. It's just because the magic mushrooms, when you bruise the stems, they go blue. And it's no sign of being poisonous or being edible or being hallucinogenic.
Non-edible.
Or any of it, no. So it's just some mushrooms do it. It's called cyanescence, so it just means that it's bluing.
So would you eat that the green bit on there?
Yeah.
Or would you just close it? Yeah.
No, that's fine. I don't eat the stems because I don't know. I don't really like the stems very much. But no, that whole lot is good to go, and that's a really good specimen. It has these funnel-shaped caps, and we don't have any of the lookalikes. In Europe, there is another one that is a lookalike, but that is still considered edible anyway. It's just not as tasty. So we don't have anything that really can be you can mistake it for. It's as long as it bleeds, growing under pines, you'll be right.
Tastes like chicken.
You reckon? I like them. You what? Yeah. For me, it's a textural thing, and I really like them preserved. So I normally a Polish friend of mine gave me her family recipe. They've all different families have different ways of preserving them. But I just boil them in 50-50 water and vinegar. Whatever pickling salts you want, spices in there. And I cook them in that and then drain them off and then put them into sterilised jars and top them up with olive oil, layer them in between with garlic and rosemary, and then I can them after that. So I have found even though the jars are sterilised, I have found that olive oil can be quite volatile and it can go rancid pretty quickly. So I always reboil my jars afterwards to make sure that they remain sterilised.
Do you say you canned them though afterwards?
Canning, that's just a word for putting them in a
Even
pot.
as a glass.
Yeah, putting them in a pot of water with the lids on just to seal them and make sure that any bacteria in there has been killed. So I reckon I'll move on to this one, and I reckon I'll use this one because that one's a better looking one than the one that's in my basket. So this has been picked here, so obviously we're going to find some of these today. This is another one that grows exclusively under pines, and this one, the name of it is Sulius granulatus, which means pig. So the first name means pig, and the granulatus refers to its stem. Although that one's not giving me a really great example of the granulatus. So this one here, as you can see, it's got little sort of scales on the stem. It's what we call the weeping bolete, and as you see here, it does weep. It has this little droplets underneath.
Weeping
Bolete. So bolete refers to the fact that it doesn't have gills. It's got these pores.
wow. Looks like a
It does.
So they're
like a sponge.
yes, that's right. So they've got tubes instead of gills. So yeah, the fungi with pores are some of the most ancient fungi there are. So the gills came after the pores. They're normally considered quite a good mushroom to eat, as long as you're finding them under pines. There are lookalikes, but and some of them are native. And in Australia, the government only wants to put in money into things that it can make money from. So studying fungi isn't up there with importance. So there's not a lot of money in studying fungi. So a lot of it comes down to, I'm in constant communication with different mycologists around Australia, and a lot of the work that is being done by in Australia for our native fungi is done by citizens like myself. And then chatting with the mycologists or students because they're free. Yeah, it's pretty difficult when you've got 90% of a budget going to a failing health system to then divide up that 10% of a budget. So there's not much known about our native fungi, and definitely nothing about edibility really. But once you do know the rules of a certain genus, it does become easier to know about edibility. But these are introduced, and majority, anything that's sort of growing in these areas, the pine forests, are going to be introduced. So there's a long history of European mushrooms being eaten. So
that's okay to eat as well, that one.
it is.
How would you cook that one?
Well, I like to just keep my mushroom cooking simple. Some people recommend peeling them, and as you can see, they do peel quite easily. Other people don't bother peeling them. Some people recommend to remove the pores. I never bother with that because I don't see the point in that. So they come away quite easily as well. But I do peel mine just because I've always been told to. And I just like to keep it simple. Butter and garlic if you want. And especially if you're going to be eating a new mushroom, even if it's buying it from the mushroom man, you want to be able to know what it tastes like. So putting it in something, you're never going to be able to taste it. And we were cooking a new mushroom with garlic, and we've decided to really just dial it back and just cook it a new one with just some olive oil and some salt, and just to really get the flavours.
Peanut oil, really, wasn't it?
Hey?
Peanut
oil, yeah, mainly. And then just adding the salt because everything's better with salt, let's face it. So that one's that one. That's the one that we're obviously going to be finding today. Now this one, the last one I've got in my basket, we won't be finding today, but it is the one that everyone wants to find. And we do have some of these in the mill today. And these are the porcini.
We thought you were going to take us to the secret porcini spot. That's what I came for, because my friends won't tell me theirs.
Oh my God.
So this is another one, and
They are hard.
yeah.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, pass it around. Yes, you can use the whole lot. And as you can see that we've just pulled these out of the ground. There is no difference how you want to pick. I cut these ones because I don't want dirt getting into my gills because it makes it difficult to get them out. Everything on this is going to be edible, so we just sort of slice back some of the dirt to get that off. So that's why we pluck them. Mushrooms are just what we see. It's like an apple on a tree. Everything else is growing underneath the ground. This one here, Armillaria, one of the American versions of it, is one of the biggest organisms in the world, and it takes up 8.8 kilometres squared in a national park in Oregon. So yeah, plucking out a mushroom is not an issue. It just depends on the sort of mushroom you have. With these little Scotch bonnets, these get really gritty, so I normally just take some scissors with me and snip the caps off. But I've included the stems because yeah, exactly. So it makes no difference, and don't let anyone make you feel bad if you want to pluck a mushroom out, especially if you don't have a knife on you. This is another one with pores underneath, and this one's probably peak edibility. I like them going a little bit more yellow than that underneath, because I think you get more flavour. One of the really great examples of, actually I might just pull this bit off here, of how to identify it is, it's got this network of almost veins. It's called reticulation or a veil, and it's quite beautiful when you get a really healthy one that hasn't been exposed to the no, that's fine, pass it around. One that hasn't been exposed to the elements like that. But yeah, so that
Stem.
yeah, that's just part of the stem. That veiling occurs right up the top, and that little one would probably have some as well. And pass that around. In Melbourne, they're selling for 130.
Yeah, 130 this year.
130.
They're up to $180 a kilo last year.
Yeah.
So how do you actually look for them? How do you look for them? They're
Under pines and oaks.
under the oaks?
Pines, oaks, chestnuts, beeches, and their relatives.
So one that size actually would cost
Yeah,
retail
yeah.
about $100.
Yeah, so they're in the Adelaide Hills, Stirling area. Sorry? Someone said that they're in Kaipo, but I don't believe
Man
that.
has it, I think, right now.
Mushroom Man buys them from the chestnut farm, Nirvana Chestnut Farm. So that's why he always gets them in early, because they're irrigated.
Yeah, he does.
But they can grow big.
That's what I just wanted to ask you, because I saw once one mushroom about that big than a public creek.
Oh, that might be a native one called
Okay. that's one I picked last
Phlobotus.
Oh, there's something like that. Oh.
It might have been this one here. Hang on.
Really? Okay.
It's the same, but it's just bigger.
There. I think you found that one.
Yeah.
I thought it's 50 centimetres.
Yeah, that's that one. This one here is a native, and that one, the biggest one recorded was a metre across. So that's Australia's biggest.
Is it?
Yes, they're just not flavoursome.
Oh, okay.
They're not worth it.
So what's the size that's the perfect flavour? Is there a size?
Well, this one's not the porcini. This is a native.
Okay, native, but if like,
The restaurants want that.
because they're
That's
smaller, so than that.
Oh, no.
Well, they just look nicer, I guess, and they don't require as much cooking. When they start to turn a bit yellow underneath, they can go through a bit of a slimy phase, but they've got more flavour. So if you can just get them through that slimy phase, and then just cook them a bit longer, then they've got a lot more flavour. I actually prefer mine bordering on rotten, but I dry them.
Okay.
And then rehydrate them, and they've got way more flavour. And once you rehydrate them, even though they're almost inedible before you dry them, they become a perfect mushroom afterwards when you rehydrate them.
Would you slice?
Yes, a centimetre.
And if you do it vertically, they're gorgeous looking,
Yeah.
aren't they? They can't, like you're saying, you take them to the almost,
Yeah.
it doesn't do anything in terms of it's okay to eat still. At what point is a mushroom like? Yeah, this is super slimy.
When it really stinks, I reckon.
Okay.
And I have actually vomited from the smell of raw mushroom. It is disgusting.
Right.
So yeah, as long as it still smells like like has a mushroom smell.
Sorry, can I see a photo?
You don't want it going soft. You don't want to be able to like touch it and only lightly touch it and then put your finger through. They can be full of maggots as well.
And did you eat that one?
So millipedes love them. I reckon I've got some millipedes in here. Yeah.
And we bag it up and use it as
So
for gravies.
yeah, we just normally scoop them out.
Oh, really?
The millipedes, yeah. And these, so all of these holes up here, These are millipede eating them.
Yeah.
And then on this one here,
Do you want to slice it right down the middle?
these little ones. Yeah, do you want to do that, Dan? These little holes here, and another one called springtails. And I had a friend pick about a kilo of these gorgeous, perfect porcini, and she ended up chucking. You can see this little springtail just here. She ended up chucking him out because there was a couple of these on there. I was like, what are you doing? It's gross. I said, just put him in the fridge overnight and just knock him out. But yeah, we probably wouldn't bother about having a little tiny bug like that. We'd probably still just cook it and eat it anyway. The maggots we don't like.
Consistency.
What's the springtail? I have no idea.
Yeah,
What is that?
there, you see in there?
God, I wouldn't even know that.
No one would. Would that bother you?
I probably eat more of that every day on a piece of fruit.
I've never heard of that before.
And you know what? In Sydney, we've got a friend over in Sydney who has a shop, an amazing shop. It's called Gourmet Life. If you're ever in Sydney, and he imports porcini from overseas, and he's actually the biggest importer of truffles, caviar, and chanterelles in Australia.
He must be.
And but when he brings in porcinis from overseas, they're all full of maggots, and people still buy them and cook them. So he gets all the Europeans coming in there and getting them, and because they're used to it.
In
But-
the European autumn.
We do get maggots at this time of year, especially when we get really warm weather. There'd be that's a millipede, yeah. There'd be maggot eggs around here. They lay them in the soil.
Right.
All right, let's go for a walk because I've just been told to wind up.
Okay. Can I just ask you this one here?
Yep.
It's the same one like...
This one here, that's the same.
Oh, it's the same.
Yep.
Okay,